Chapter 9 of Sid Fleshman's The Whipping Boy. Chapter 9, revealing Jemmy's plan to trick the villains. Hold-your-nose Billy popped a clove of garlic into his mouth, ground it between his yellow teeth, and helped himself to a veal pie. Nothing like garlic to clear the head and fend off the plague, Cutwater. Give the legs a ration of breakfast. The scrawny outlaw sliced off 2 thick pieces of coarse bread. He draped a salt herring across each slice. Eat hearty, little fellers. This smelly stuff, Prince Brat glared at the bread and herring. It's not fit for flies. Why, we eat it regular, worms and all, said Cutwater, picking the bones of the pheasant. I'll starve first, said the prince. Suit yourself, Cutwater snickered. This is the first time we've ever feasted off the king's own table, and there's hardly enough for me and Billy. Jemmy sat on the bed straw beside the prince and contemplated his breakfast. He examined the bread closely, hunting for varmints. The prince, he knew, had never been starved enough to pick out wildlife from his grub. Eat, he whispered. I can't find any crawly things in it. The bread's stale, grumbled the prince. Stale enough to patch a roof, but I've scoffed down worse. The prince began to nibble around the edges. Hold-your-nose Billy glanced over and grinned. Take a chaw of garlic, whipping boy. It'll improve the taste considerable. Cutwater wiped his thin, greasy lips with the back of his hand. Billy, how do we know the prince ain't laid a trap for us in that message? He could have said one thing and wrote another. Well, where will we find someone to read it off for us? Jemmy lifted his chin to a regal height. You doubt the word and honor of your prince? Insolent oafs, curs, I'll have you horsewhipped. Cutwater's yanked Jemmy to his feet. Who are you calling them names? I'll flog your hide pink as a salmon. Hold-your-nose Billy pushed him aside. Keep your wits. It's worse than common murder to lay hands on a prince. No need to break any more of the king's laws than we have to. If it comes to a flogging, there's his whipping boy. The prince's eyes widened and his face went white as a ghost. The prospect of taking a whipping himself had never occurred to him. But, sir, it wasn't me who called you those names. Cutwater gave a sudden cackle. Sir, is it now? That's more like it. But tell the prince here to keep a civil tongue in his head. Prince Brat shot Jemmy a poisonous look. The garlicky outlaw was leaning closer to Jemmy. See here, Prince, it's not that we doubt your word and honesty, not a bit. But all the same, let's hear you read off the message. Jemmy turned away from the man's breath and began to read. No, lad. Let's have it from bottom to top. Read it backwards. I do hope for your whipping boy's sake that you don't stumble and trip as if the real words ain't really there. Jemmy shrugged. It says, Son obedient your obedient son, said Hold-your-nose Billy. Keep at it. Jewels and gold of cart full of ransom a demand they. They demand a ransom of a cart, a full. The outlaw began to stumble and trip over the words himself. Aye, that's the ticket. Jemmy read the message through backward, and then a second time before the hairy outlaw was satisfied. Now then, he said, all we got to do is get the message to the king without getting nabbed in the act. Simple, declared Jemmy. Send it to the castle in the hands of my whipping boy. Chapter 10, in which Prince Brat lives up to his name. Hold-your-nose Billy clapped a leery eye on the rat-catcher's son. Prince, do you take me for a precious fool? Send your whipping boy? To blab out where we're hid, eh? The king will come chopping down every tree if he finds out we're nested in the woods. Jemmy assumed a princely air of indifference. Then tote the message yourself. It's no skin off my ear if you never get back alive. He filled his mouth with bread and herring. I declare this is tasty. Prince Brat scoffed under his breath. He hadn't shown a moment's interest in Jemmy's scheme to free him. Their eyes met and clashed. Oh, Jemmy thought, he's fuming like a stovepipe at being unprinced. He'll have me charged with treason. I'll stand guard over the prince, said Cutwater. You're the one to go, Billy. Me, hooted the big man. Me that they sing songs about and pinch their noses? At the first whiff of garlic, it would be off with the head of Hold-your-nose Billy. Unlikely, corrected Jemmy. True, Papa would have you tortured a mite to loosen your tongue, but he wouldn't have your head, not Papa. He favors slow boiling in oil. The effect on the outlaws was instant. Hold-your-nose Billy's jaw dropped. Sweat broke out across his face like raindrops. Cutwater, you're skin and bones. You could slip in and out of a keyhole. I'll guard the prince. Oh, Billy, I don't fancy being boiled to a crisp. The hairy outlaw gave a loud and decisive snort. We'll send the whipping boy. Jemmy held back a sigh of relief. And my crown with him. Your golden crown? Blurted out Cutwater. Not by half, we won't. Jemmy made the pretense of blazing up with impatience. Simpleton! I swear there are not two more ignorant, cloven-footed blockheads in the land. Prince Brat shot Jemmy a quick thunder-scowl look. Stop it, he whispered harshly. Don't give them the rough side of your tongue. You'll get me whipped. Jemmy ignored him. Donkeys, he continued. Before the day is out, dozens of villains will deliver up false claims. Only my crown will convince Papa that you're the genuine villain. Hold-your-nose Billy began to pace, munching garlic cloves as if they were grapes. Finally, he tipped the crown off his head and flung it to Prince Brat. Whipping boy, deliver it to the king. If he doesn't follow our instructions to the letter, the prince will be done for. Cutwater snickered, drawing a knife-like finger across his throat. And blab all you want, added the other outlaw. We'll pack the prince off to a different hiding place. By its smelly tail, Prince Brat tossed aside the uneaten herring. Without showing the slightest concern for Jemmy's fate, he flicked a glance at the two outlaws. I'll deliver nothing, he exploded. I won't go back to the castle. Chapter 11, containing a great deal of shouting. Jemmy was struck dumb. Did Prince Brat have sand for brains? Oh, didn't he realize that he could snatch up his crown and go free? It doesn't please me to take orders from common rascals, Prince Brat said coldly. It would please me to shake your teeth out of your confounded face, replied Hold-your-nose Billy. You may live in a castle, but you're only a whipping boy. Do as we say. I'll do what I choose, and I choose not to run your errands. Jemmy leapt up and gave the prince an angry flash of eyes. Jemmy from the streets gets these stubborn fits, he said, contrary as a mule. Let me have a word with him. I'll whip the malicious out of him, exclaimed Cutwater, lurching forward. Prince Brat dodged out of his grasp, and a sour smile crossed his face. I'll tear up your vile message the moment I'm gone, and keep the crown for myself. Hold-your-nose Billy caught Cutwater upraised arm. Hold off. There's something in what he says. You think he's angling for a share of the reward, Billy? He likely is, said Cutwater. The greedy little snipe. Cutwater bleated. How much do you reckon we can spare? This calls for private words. Let's parley. Follow me. The moment the outlaws ducked out of the hut, Jemmy turned on his companion. Prince Blockhead, you should wear your crown on to fend off woodpeckers. Impostor, how dare you insult me, said the prince. You're enough to give me fits. Haven't I so muddled their brains that they want to turn you loose, and you reward me with a royal squawk? The prince had crossed to the wicker basket and snatched up an uneaten apple tart. He gobbled it down. I'll return to the castle when I'm ready, when I choose, and not a moment before. And here's the two boys arguing. Cutwater and Hold-your-nose Billy are having a little conference. Jemmy's eyes narrowed sharply. He couldn't fathom what was stirring in the prince's mind. Could he, for once, be concerned for someone other than himself? It's not me you think you're protecting, is it? You? Knowing they'll knock the daylights out of me as soon as they find out I tricked them? The prince shrugged. You're quick, boy. You'll think of something. I've already thought it. Once you're up and gone, I'll slip away. Out in the forest, I'll be harder to catch than a flea. But I'm not leaving, said the prince firmly. Oh, but why? Is it your paw you're afraid of? Is that why you won't go back? The prince scoffed. He won't miss me. Of course he will, said Jemmy. Let him wait, and mind your own affairs, whipping boy. It is my affair. Do you reckon we're out here on a lark with murderers outside? The murderers shuffled back into the hut. Hold-your-nose Billy fixed Prince Brat with a hairy smile. Never let it be sung about me and Cutwater that we ain't generous to a fault, lad. We'll share with you a bucket full of gold and jewels. No, replied the prince flatly, as if he'd been offered a bucket full of coal. Don't run me out of patience, warned the huge outlaw. The prince remained defiant. I'm staying. Holy-Nosed Billy ripped off his leather belt. I'll lash a bit of sense into your head. Jemmy saw that Prince Brat wasn't going to shift his ground. You don't need my whipping boy to get into the castle. There's a better way. Do say, exclaimed Cutwater doubtfully. My horse, remarked Jemmy. There's your messenger, sirs. Holy-Nosed Billy gave a snort. Oh, that fine beast? We've been afoot since our skin-poor horse turned heels up. We need a mount in our line of work. Nitwits, exclaimed Jemmy, as if his own princely patience were at an end. With rings on your fingers and gold in your pockets, you can take to the roads like fine gentlemen. You'll be traveling about in fine coaches. But first, you've got to lay hands on the treasure. Cutwater made a sound through his nose like a pitch pipe. With that horse outside? One of the king's own. A horse can always find his way back home, can it? That fine beast will make for the castle stables, note and crown. No questions asked. And that's the end of chapter 11.